SpaceX stated in 2013 that they will attempt to land their Falcon 9 rocket on the ground. To make matters more complicated, they plan to land on a floating droneship in the middle of the ocean this year. Something like this had never been attempted before, and it appeared impossible at the time. However, if it succeeds, it will be a huge stride forward in rocket reusability. As a result, SpaceX began testing several test vehicles in order to understand how to land a rocket. After several years and several explosions, SpaceX has finally accomplished the seemingly impossible. The stunning image of a Falcon 9 landing has become common 5 years after that momentous initial touchdown. With so many launches under their belts these days, SpaceX has honed this remarkable feat of engineering and saved a lot of money. They save money by not having to develop a new rocket every time a Falcon 9 is reflown. This has saved SpaceX approximately $1.5 billion in the previous 5 years. SpaceX is still the only firm that has successfully landed and reused an orbital rocket booster. However, they are currently concentrating their energies on Starship, the next step in the evolution of insane space concepts. Those of us who have been following the Starship program have witnessed some spectacular sights. One of the strangest things SpaceX has ever done was the recent SN8 test flight. However, it demonstrated that their lofty Starship aspirations are more feasible than most of us imagined. After all of SpaceX's wacky antics over the previous 5 years, it seems that things couldn't get much weirder. Until now, Elon Musk casually disclosed a new plan to land the Super Heavy rocket on Twitter. The aim, though, isn't to land Super Heavy at all. SpaceX, on the other hand, intends to capture it out of the air as it approaches the launch pad. It's a whole different type of flight. Despite the fact that this sounds like another wacky Elon concept, SpaceX isn't the only firm considering collecting rockets in the sky. Rocket Lab intends to use parachutes and a helicopter to catch its Electron rocket. NASA contemplated capturing the massive Saturn V first stage with a helicopter with rotor blades over 100 meters long in the 1960s. In comparison, SpaceX's plan appears to be a bit less insane. But, before we go into how and why SpaceX is pursuing this ambitious goal, if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to our channel, where we keep you up to date on all the latest news from Elon Musk, Tesla, and SpaceX. It only takes a few seconds to subscribe, and while you're there, if you could leave a like on the video, that would be greatly appreciated. So we've figured out how SpaceX will capture the Super Heavy rocket. However, in order to grasp why, we must first comprehend Starship's overarching aim. The booster stage, nicknamed Super Heavy, and the second stage, informally named Starship, are the two stages that make up Starship. The second stage is lifted out of the thickest sections of the atmosphere by Super Heavy, and Starship completes the remainder of the job to go into orbit. Super Heavy, like the Falcon 9, comes back down to land after separating. The goal of Starship is to go to the Moon and Mars. To do this, SpaceX will refuel in orbit with a fleet of Starships. Furthermore, SpaceX intends to use Starship for passenger travel between Earth and other planets. This implies Starship will have to fly many times a day with a turnaround time comparable to commercial airlines. Super Heavy was supposed to land immediately on the launch platform, putting it ready for its next mission right away. Although this would have several advantages, it would need a level of accuracy much beyond what SpaceX has demonstrated with its Falcon 9 landings. So SpaceX came up with the concept of landing Super Heavy on a landing pad and lifting it onto the launch platform with a massive crane. At least 6 exceptionally big landing legs with enough stress absorption to withstand the landing would be required. But this is when the difficulties begin. The booster must be returned to a refurbishing hangar for the Falcon 9 landings, where numerous components must be changed and examined. The landing legs are one of the most important components of their refurbishing procedure. All of this requires a significant amount of time, which Super Heavy does not have. Not only would removing the legs from the design drastically shorten the turnaround time, but it would also save a significant amount of weight. The rocket will be able to transport larger payloads into orbit with every kilogram of mass saved. With 6 legs on the Super Heavy, the landing gear's overall mass would be about 10% of the booster's total mass when it landed. SpaceX's only option without legs is to grab the rocket. This will still need a high level of precision, since the booster will need to strike its targets nearly flawlessly. The ability to hover is one of Super Heavy's major advantages over the Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 is too powerful to hover even with just one engine running, therefore it must conduct a kamikaze burn. This entails firing its engine at precisely the proper moment, reducing the vertical velocity to 0 as soon as it lands. Because the Super Heavy has more engines than the Falcon 9, its thrust-to-weight ratio may be reduced to 1. This will allow it to hover above the pad for a longer period of time, allowing it to alter its path. Using a gigantic arm linked to the launch tower, SpaceX will attempt to capture the rocket on its final approach. As Super Heavy approaches the landing zone, the needle will be threaded between these capturing arms until they retract inwards and lock into place. One of the most important aspects of this concept is that the catcher will latch onto the grid fins, which will be responsible for carrying the whole booster's weight. At first glance, this appears to be an enormous amount of force to apply to the grid fins. However, they are already quite powerful in this direction since they are intended to handle a significant amount of drag during re-entry. Despite this unusual landing approach, shock absorption will be required to manage the final amount of energy and bring the booster to a halt. Normally, the landing legs would take care of this stress absorption. The landing legs on the Falcon 9 are made out of telescopic tubes filled with pressurized helium. The pressurized gas works as a shock absorber as the legs fold in on themselves. The important point to note here is that the catcher, not the rocket, will absorb the shock. This will minimize the amount of stress placed on the rocket, obviating the need for substantial repairs. SpaceX is expected to utilize a similar air suspension technology, albeit on a far bigger scale. Another possibility is that they'll utilize a cable capturing system similar to those seen on aircraft carriers. This system consists of numerous steel ropes stretched out on the runway and designed to be caught by an aircraft's tailhook. The energy is absorbed by hydraulic dampening systems beneath the deck when the hook interacts with the cables, rapidly bringing it to a rest. Taking all of this off the rocket and putting it on the landing arm will allow Super Heavy to be as light as possible while not putting too much strain on itself. However, losing weight is only one piece of the issue. The ability to quickly restart the booster is the main advantage here. The rocket can be secured, detanked, and inspected for its next flight if it can be quickly placed into the launch mount after landing. After all, the detanking procedure is critical for Starship, which will still have a surplus of methane after landing. Because methane cannot be released into the atmosphere, SpaceX intends to return the leftovers to the tank farm, where they will be recondensed and utilized for the next trip. So, while we may have to wait a few years for SpaceX to try this insane notion, it's amazing to watch them take on such great engineering difficulties. When SpaceX successfully landed their first rocket 5 years ago, it reshaped our perceptions of what is possible and significantly advanced the field of spaceflight. Whatever happens, it is obvious that we are witnessing the making of history. Who's eager to see Elon Musk start making rockets for us to go to Mars and other crazy inventions? Let us know your thoughts on the topic in the comments section below. A quick reminder to subscribe to our channel. There's a link down below for more Tesla news and conjecture. If you want to learn more about Tesla, SpaceX, and Elon Musk, we have 2 more video alternatives for you to watch on the screen. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more weekly news like this.